Of terrorism that are almost beyond comprehension. Hijackers seized control of 4 planes, including 2 that crashed into the World Trade Center.
The Pentagon shares a similar fate as the U.S. vows to hunt down and punish those responsible.
We have watched the tragedy of an outrageous act of barbaric terrorism carried out by fanatics against both civilians and military people. Acts that have killed and maimed many innocent and decent citizens of our country.
Thousands may have perished. The search is on for the living. From CNN Center, I'm Jonathan Mann.
And I'm Relitza Vasilova. September 11th, 2001 began like most other Tuesdays in the United States. Millions of Americans awoke, many heading off to work, others perhaps to the airport. But normalcy ended at 8:48 a.m. Eastern Time when this happened. An airliner crashed into the North Tower, New York's World Trade Center. It had been diverted by hijackers. They'd also commandeered 3 other jets, 1 minute after the first, slamming into the Trade Center's South Tower. That was the end of a prominent part of the city's skyline for the past 3 decades. It was also the end of thousands of lives. The next hijacked plane fell from the sky as well, this time devastating a section of the Pentagon, the hub of military operations in the United States. An unknown number killed there. Finally, the 4th aircraft crashed into Pennsylvania's rural Somerset County. As in the case of the other 3 planes, all aboard were killed.
It is being called America's newest day of infamy, a horrible tragedy, a horrendous turning point in history. Our colleague Garrick Utley joins us now from New York. Garrick?
John, there comes a point in a tragedy like this where the initial shock that numbs the body and the mind gives way to the body somehow dealing with it, minds functioning once again and getting to work. And that's what's happening behind us, our position here in Lower Manhattan. The rescue work continues. It is a 24-hour-a-day and night operation. These are some of the latest images from the Trade Center area. We see the heavy equipment that's been moved in, fire hoses still being played on the building, although the fire, as far as we know, is largely out. There's still considerable amounts of dust in the air, and they will continue because of the work itself, which is going on there. Now, we know that when the 2 towers, each more than 100 floors high, collapse, there are thousands of lives, no doubt, lost inside. But to try to give a sense of who was in there, what this rescue operation is going after, here are some of the companies, the tenants in the World Trade Center. Major companies like Morgan Stanley, financial giants, had 22 floors at the World Trade Center. New York State Blue Shield, Blue Cross had 10 floors. Credit Suisse, First Boston, and one of the major international institutions had a large operation there. Sun Microsystems had at least 2 floors in one of the Trade Center towers. And the Oppenheimer Funds Incorporated was on 4 floors. Hundreds and thousands of employees of these firms trapped there and believed, almost all of them, most certainly lost. The rescue efforts there are continuing, and there are still the stories coming in, the individual stories of those who were in the building and escaped with their lives. And what we want to present to you right now is some of these eyewitness accounts as they occurred this day and recorded by our CNN camera teams and reporters. Here they are.
I was walking to work about 8:45, going south down Manhattan Island. Looked like a 737 jet. Went straight into the north side of the World Trade Center. Went in, looked like slow motion, and it looked like something out of a movie.
We were watching CNN actually, and they were telling us, that World Trade Center 1 got hit. People were screaming, calm down, nothing is happening here. But at that moment, at exactly that moment, the plane hit us.
Holy shit!
when that second plane hit, a huge fireball in the sky, an explosion that kind of knocked you back. Then you look up into the blue sky and you see all this debris coming and flying. Everybody's running like a riot.
Get out! Get out! Get out!
The tower collapsed, and it was just a big onrush of ash and smoke and people running. It was horrible.
It was complete dark. There is no light. So, thank God somebody with little light came up because we couldn't even see what's happening.
Everybody's bleeding. People are laying all over the floor. It's horrible. And I was there the first time, and this is twice.
When the explosion went off and everything went black and my lungs filled up with the debris, I just thought, okay, I might die here.
I was about 5 blocks away. What we did see were people jumping out of the building in suits. It was unbelievable.
I came down here with about 25 police officers. We went inside. We were effecting an evacuation on the second floor. We were helping people out of the building while we still weren't sure exactly what happened. Then we heard stuff coming down. The next thing I know, it was complete darkness. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't see. The building had come down. And how I got out, I don't know. I'm very blessed. Myself, my CO, and one other officer shouldn't be here, but we got out.
Some of the eyewitness accounts today, and this is a live scene of 8th Avenue in Manhattan, looking down to lower Manhattan, and as you can see, it is empty. You can't drive down there. Nobody is driving, even in the parts of Midtown Manhattan, which are still open to traffic. The city has been dead tonight. Of course, it's a little after 4 a.m., but usually at this time, there's plenty of activity and life in these concrete canyons of Midtown New York City, but not on this evening. People are home, people are sleeping, and one of the things that really shows how a city like this, a city of more than 7 million people, has been affected, is a very simple thing. By 4:10 a.m. in the morning Eastern Time, we'd be having the first editions of the morning newspapers, the New York Times, the Daily News, and the New York Post. We don't have them yet. Why? The reporters and editorial offices are just a few blocks from here. The Daily News is just right over here, 1 block away. But their printing presses several years ago were moved outside of Manhattan, where real estate is cheaper. They're across the Hudson River over there in New Jersey. Some of them are over in Queens in that direction. The tunnels are closed. The bridges are closed. Obviously, they'll get the papers into town at some point. But as of right now, on this Wednesday morning, there are no newspapers in New York, as New Yorkers will soon be waking up. Back to you now in Atlanta.
Thank you, Garrick. New York Mayor Rudy Giuliani says the dimension of his city's tragedy will be very large in terms of casualties, the death toll more than likely in the thousands. But he says search and rescue officials will keep going, keep hoping, and keep praying.
The rescue teams are able to get very close now. It was very difficult during the day, but in most places they now can operate. There's still a few dangerous areas, but they're able to operate. They're able to operate down there now.
And joining us now with the latest on the search and rescue efforts in New York is Michael Okwu. Michael, what can you tell us?
Hi, Relitza. Just moments ago, we saw 3 victims transported and brought here into St. Vincent's Hospital. It is unclear, I should say, whether any of those victims sustained injuries having anything to do with the World Trade Center attack. For the most part, it has been very quiet here. We haven't seen any action outside of those 3 victims brought in here moments ago and in more than about 2 to 3 hours now. For the most part, what we've seen here is a handful of medical personnel. We've seen gurneys, and just next to them we have office furniture essentially covered in sheets, all there and set up presumably to transport some of what they hope will be many of the survivors who may still be possibly trapped near the twisted litter and metal and rubble of lower Manhattan, which is just 5 minutes due south of here. St. Vincent's Hospital, as you may know at this point, has become the main triage and trauma center here in New York. Some moments ago, at about 10:30 actually last night, hospital officials told us that 327 patients were admitted here, 50 to 55 of whom were at that time in critical condition. And of course, they have pronounced 3 people dead here on the scene. Earlier today, my colleague Greg Clarkin spoke to one of the doctors here at St. Vincent's.
Well, there's a whole host of injuries, anything you'd see in any other kind of major trauma. Obviously, a lot of broken bones, cuts and bruises, but a lot of blunt trauma, chest trauma, head trauma, things like that. Well, I mean, the longer people are buried, I think the more severe the injury, and there's going to be a lot of smoke and gas inhalation, and people are going to be dealing with that in the next 12 to 24 hours, I believe.
Now, earlier this evening, Governor George Pataki of New York visited the hospital. He said that he visited with many of the victims who were brought here, as well as to the doctors who were trying to perform feats of heroism. He said that their stories were unusual. And on this night in New York, it's very difficult to imagine describing it as anything other than that. Back to you guys.
Michael, thanks very much. All day Tuesday, firefighters struggled to bring a massive blaze under control at the Pentagon after a hijacked plane hit the building at 9:38 a.m. local time. Overnight, the search has been underway for the dead and missing, and last information we have is that the fire itself is still burning. Bob Franken has the latest. Bob?
Well, John, actually smoldering is more like it. They're hoping that they can have it enough under control that at about daybreak they can peel away the wall, the part that was hit by the plane, and start to go through the rubble, looking to see who's inside, looking for casualties, looking for the human cost of this tragedy, which of course hit New York but has also hit the Pentagon, the sign of military strength in the United States. As you can see, people have been around the building now for so many hours. It was about 9:40 yesterday morning that this happened, and all day and all night and throughout the night they have been climbing around the building, dealing with the fire inside, allowing it to burn out, spending so much time. Now, at the very same time, there was still work going on there. There are plans to, in fact, put ships out to sea on both coasts to protect the west coast, where an entire flotilla of ships is going out, including the aircraft carrier Stennis. On the east coast, the Kennedy and other ships have gone out along to protect the east coast of the United States. And in the area of the Middle East, there are ships that are, in fact, were scheduled to come back to the United States, but they're being kept there. The Enterprise, in particular, the aircraft carrier and its retinue of ships. So, at the same time, the United States is still trying to recover from the shock, particularly the shock here to its military establishment, the center of its military activity, the Pentagon. Military plans are very slowly developing when it comes time for retaliation. John?
Bob Franken, thanks very much. A fourth hijacked plane crashed in a rural area of Pennsylvania. The United Airlines Boeing 757 was headed from Newark, New Jersey to San Francisco with 45 people on board when it went down. Intelligence sources say they believe the intended destination was another government target, possibly Camp David, the presidential retreat. There was some speculation that the plane was shot down, but the military denies it. Local emergency officials say a man who identified himself as a passenger on the flight called by cell phone just 10 minutes before the plane crashed. That was how authorities learned the plane had been hijacked.
In a 5-minute address to the nation, a grim-faced President George W. Bush said the United States would make no distinction between terrorists and those who harbor them. The president said thousands of lives were claimed by the, quote, evil, despicable act of terror, end of quote. He branded the attacks, quote, mass murder, and said those responsible would be hunted down.
These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong. A great people has been moved to defend a great nation. Terrorist attacks can shake the foundations of our biggest buildings, but they cannot touch the foundation of America. These acts shattered steel, but they cannot dent the steel of American resolve.
American forces overseas have been put on high alert. The U.S. European Command in Germany says it is taking steps to ensure the security of the troops and their families. For more, we're joined by our correspondent Tom Bogdanovich at the U.S. base in Ramstein, Germany. Tom.
Good morning. Well, let me first tell you about what's going on at the German equivalent of the World Trade Center. That was evacuated this morning after a bomb threat. 4,000 people work in that very tall tower. But I understand that has been calmed down. Everybody is back at work. So that's the German Messeturm. the motor show which is taking place in Frankfurt here, that is going on